All right, I'm John. I'm one of the IT guys at Chef, and my talk today is managing the fleet, all of the fleet, with Chef. And just to give you a little bit about me, I'm a recovering Windows admin type, and now I'm mostly a Ruby, Python, PowerShell, C# developer type. Chef has an IT staff of 3. I'm the only developer on the team. Chef is about 95% Mac users, about 4.5% Windows users, and a couple percentage points of Linux users. Chef has 300 employees all over the planet, literally. We have like, 100 people in the UK spread out. We have half a dozen people in Singapore and Australia, and spread out all over the US and Canada. About 60% of our staff is non-technical, although relatively savvy-ish, and the other 40% are really serious developer types. And so that gives us a couple of challenges then in how to manage our fleet. The first thing, we went through some of the same processes internally that ThoughtWorks did about how we're going to capture and manage laptops and be sort of thoughtful about how we're going to take care of the hardware. And a couple things we decided we wanted to do was, first off, capture all the devices, Windows, Macs, and Linux laptops or devices, and do it with 0 touch and 0 reboots if we can get away with it. The second thing that we thought was important was in controlling behavior for the employees. And what I mean by that, I'll give you more detail on that in a second, but mostly it was around how to encourage positive behaviors of usage of things and discourage things like shadow IT, right? So we started off using Jamf. Initially, we liked Jamf. We used it like, 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. We liked it. But what we found is that we were kind of limited by Jamf because where we would try and put some controls in place to do things like enforce a screensaver with a password, the version of Jamf we had was locking out entire sections of UI, and we found that that was like way more than the staff were going to put up with, right? So we figured we want a little bit more control and a little bit less control, I guess, from Jamf at the same time. So what we ended up doing then was using Jamf to push out bash scripts that got what we wanted from the laptops. And then at some point in there, we're like, can we do better? Is there something more we could do? And then our friends at Facebook showed up, and they had some great ideas about how to use Chef to manage the laptops, and so we started our adventure there. So we had some other goals around moving to Chef as well. For us, automation is king. Obviously, there's only 3 of us, right? So we got to be able to do a lot with a little bit of time and energy. We wanted to provide a consistent experience for the staff, make sure everybody has the same sort of experience, I guess. We're not doing one-offs or handwriting things. We wanted to enforce a very modest amount of policy, which I'm going to describe in a minute. We wanted to also capture the state of the laptops and be able to say relatively authoritatively who is in a policy or who's out of policy in terms of like, are you patched? Do you have the latest version of this app? Things like that. And then the one thing we also wanted to take a look at and investigate was being able to use a single stack of cookbooks. If you're familiar with Chef at all, anybody use Chef? Yeah. So if you use Chef, we have a cookbook stack that detect the operating system and execute based on that. The other thing, coming back to the users again too for a minute, and our approach to managing the users was we wanted to be super low touch, encouraging, and be sort of insightful, not insightful necessarily, but open to what we're doing, so we're transparent, right? So the things we wanted to enforce then for the laptops were either File Vault on the Macs or BitLocker on the Windows laptops. We wanted to enforce a screensaver with a password policy. We want to make sure the systems are all up to date and patched. We want to put a rescue account on there, so if somebody from IT needs to get on your laptop, we can get in there and not disturb your work. And we want to make sure that we can capture the File Vault keys for recovery and then push out Monkey so that everybody can have a consistent set of apps on Mac or use Gorilla on Windows. to get there, what we use is a combination of process methodology and some tools. First, of course, is everybody's using DevOps process methodologies, so we implement those and use Kanban to describe the workflows. We have a Chef server. We use a hosted Chef instance for our installation. You need a Chef workstation to build against. We have a Crypt server. We have a Monkey server. And then we use Jesse's micro MDM server to capture all the laptops with, or capture the Macintoshes with. We use Azure for the Windows boxes. So for us then, the sort of basic ingestion starts with the Macintoshes. We call up Apple when we buy a laptop, or we call one of the partners and have them upload the serial number information into DEP for us. Or with Autopilot, there's sort of a limited number of devices that are supported for automatic ingestion. So right now we can have a Surface device, an HP or a Lenovo device. You call up your partner and they'll upload the serial number information or the Autopilot information into your Azure instance for you. And then when the device boots up, then begins the process, the MDM process. So for Macs then, what we're doing is we have the devices boot up, talk to Apple DEP, get redirected to our micro MDM instance, and then during the install application stage of configuration or setup, the Macintoshes all download a package. The package opens up and runs a Python script, which calls into Azure and then downloads a whole bunch of other files and packages. One of those packages is the Chef client, and then the last thing it does is run the Chef client run the first time and makes it join the Chef server for management at that point. And then something slightly similar then for the Windows laptops is the Windows devices boot the first time, check in with Azure, get redirected by Autopilot, and then they're passed a couple of PowerShell scripts we run that do the same thing essentially as the install applications process, which is set up the Chef client and then do the first Chef run. So then when we want to talk about how we manage policy or how we like once the Chef server or the Chef clients have all run, how do we know that we're in compliance or what the clients are all doing, right? So we have three basic ways that we've automated so far. We're going to be doing more, but the first three are that we can check the Chef server itself and see where the last time was that the client checked in. So for example, if I do this, so for this guy then, you can see this one laptop at the top here hasn't checked in 23 days. So clearly something's wrong. I need to go check that, stalk that guy and figure out what's going on with him. We have a corresponding database that maps the serial number of the node back to an individual who we can go talk to. And then similarly, retry. Let's see if my Wi-Fi just died on me too. Yes, it did. Give me a second. Sorry. There we go. All right, so here in our inspec instance, we have is one profile. Where'd my profile go? One profile with 7 controls in it. And when we drill into here, you can see 30 nodes are missing up-to-date Apple patches. 9 of them don't have the recovery user listed, and one person is failing file vault encryption. So we have some pretty interesting ways we can track down who's doing what or what's missing, and then contact the user at that point and get them back into policy. There we go. So where we're going to get started in is when you want to get started with this, the entire solution is open sourced. It's all community supported. Facebook, Pinterest, and others have open sourced all the software for you to do this with. I wrote a WordPress site you can take a look at, and that's the listing for it right there. If you go to GitHub, you can search for the IT-CPE name, and it'll show up like 4 or 5 people who released their code for humanity to look at. And then if you're not already, I think everybody here has to be among our Mac admins, but if you're not, then you can go to that website and self-register. And then what's next for us then is going to be about where we go to get the Linux boxes pulled in, because we're not quite there yet. So we think we're going to implement Penguin Dome and use that as a Linux MDM server and capture the Linux devices and then bootstrap them and then have them pull into the, and being managed by Chef at that point. And then the other thing, the last piece that's we were getting questions on this week is about, we changed our licensing model recently, and people are like, how are we going to do this? And so the answer is, really what our licensing model was about capturing server revenue and not necessarily about client revenue. So we're working on resolving some of that, and there should be more detail towards the end of the year on that. And that's the end of my slides. That's it.